Working?
Yeah.
Yep, we're gone. That was awesome, man. Last week, Jeremy, I played this in, and right, he hits the live button and he goes, play something in 13 or 12. And I'm like, that was awesome. Everybody, welcome to. Exactly. Welcome to Drummers Education Connection. I'm Bart Robley, and today I'm here with three amazing drummers. Our friend Chip is not here today. Up in the Bay Area, our friend Jeremy Steinkohler. In San Diego, Rick Stojak, and Walfredo Reyes Jr. from the band Chicago is with us today. Oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. Walfredo, thank you so much for being on the show today. This is incredible. We really appreciate it.
This is the greatest, man. Drum hangs are the best.
Aren't they? Hey, so before we get started, what we always do, I don't know if Jeremy clued you in when I stepped out of the room, but what we do is we do a thing called Good Things. And what it is we just go around the room real quick and talk about good stuff that we got going on in our lives outside of drumming or inside of drumming, touring, whatever we want to talk about real quick. And then we get on with the interview. If anybody wants to be a Patreon, you can go to our Patreon page and help us keep the lights on here at Drummers Education Connection. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with Jeremy, the steamroller. What's going on in your life that's good today there, Jeremy? What's happening?
A couple great gigs last weekend, super fun. And tomorrow is the final decision day for my kid deciding where he's going to college. So very excited about that. Yeah, it's come down to Northwestern and USC. Those are his two choices.
I'm a USC dad.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk a little bit. He's a jazz piano player, so he's going for jazz studies.
He's an amazing jazz piano player, man. We got to see him play during Deck Day. It was phenomenal.
Oh, here's the other big news. I forgot to say, his high school big band and his high school combo this past weekend were at the California State Jazz Championships. It's like an adjudicated festival where bands from all over the state come and compete, and they get graded and stuff. And both his combo and his big band won first place.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Fantastic.
Big deal. Yeah,
That's really cool. That's awesome. Wow. Rick, what about you? What's happening with you, buddy?
Man, I tell you what, my good thing is right here. Walfredo Reyes Jr. is on Drummers Education Connection. That's a good thing.
Thank you.
Years ago in San Diego, I taught drums at a store called Music Mart, and you came in and did a clinic, and I was massively inspired. And so thank you for lighting that spark under me years ago for Latin drumming.
Was that the one with Kevin Ricard?
Yes. Yes.
I remember that.
Yep. Yeah. I learned a lot of stuff that day.
Thank you.
Incredible. Well, very good. Well, let's jump in. Walfredo, welcome to Deck.
Oh, we got to ask Walfredo what's going on good for him.
Yeah, what's going on good with you, buddy? What's happening good with you? What do you got going on good with you?
Well, before I tell you this, you kind of like open up my memories and my heart with the USC. So when I was a little story, when I was with Chicago, and I joined in 2014 as a percussionist, and then my daughter wanted to go to music school, and in 2014 I was having problem with my wrist. I had a cyst here while I was playing percussion, and I was going to get operated, and then she got to audition at USC, and it was Patrice Rushen, which she's still there for your son. It might be fantastic. She's one of the best. So Patrice Rushen, I auditioned her and wanted her and then of course my daughter, because we had her mom and I divorced, and it was a difficult situation, but I used to tell her you need piano and basic piano and all of that. So she didn't do a lot of that, but then she's as a vocalist joined the Thornton music school, and her first year, she was just doing the a cappella choir and all that. And I taught her how to read rhythm. And one night, because I needed to go with Chicago on the road, and she started USC. And then It was a fantastic program. And her last year, her fourth year, she auditioned and got the gig with George Benson.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And while she's still in college.
While she was still in college. And so that made it extremely difficult, because then now, because of Patrice Rushen had a same situation. She had a major jazz gig while she was in USC. And because of she was not finished with school, the teachers told her, no, you cannot go on the road, or you cannot do the gig. And it was just like heartbreaking. But Patrice Rushen made sure that was not going to happen. So somehow they bend and manipulated the situation to where my daughter can make this gig. And the funny thing is, I got operated with my cyst, and then my daughter auditioned for George Benson, got the gig on vocals, and then she goes, Dad, they're asking me to play percussion. and George Benson said, well, your dad plays percussion, and your brother and your dad, right? So it would be great to have a girl percussionist. So she goes, what should I do? And then I said, well, when is the gig? The gig starts. He goes, well, we're in November, and he's going back on the road like in February. He goes, honey, I know the book really well. It's Ralph McDonald. I know the book really well. You can do it. Boot camp, 8 hours a day at my house, November, December, January. And that's what we did. And I basically made a chart of the whole discography of George Benson.
Yeah.
This is only vocals. This you play percussion and vocals, tambourine. And then this one you start playing congas. So I had to get conga lessons, bongo lessons. So basically she auditioned again for percussion and got the gig for the second time.
Amazing.
So that's my USC, my daughter Liliana de los Reyes, and I'm very proud of her. USC was intense. It's not just the teachers. At the time, she was telling me, Dad, I'm getting a drum set lesson today. He goes, oh, even though you're a vocalist? He goes, yeah, I got beginning drum set with Peter Erskine.
Beginner drum set with Peter Erskine. Wow, that's
you don't usually hear those two words together. He's actually gone now. He just left last year.
Did he really?
Yeah, I can't remember who they got to replace him, but
I think that oh my God, mental blockout, Yellow Jackets, Will Kennedy.
Will Kennedy.
Will Kennedy.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he's teaching there now. Will Kennedy took over for Peter Erskine.
So and Undugu passed away.
Right.
And Undugu was actually there when my daughter was there, and he was very helpful. And I actually got offered, to teach there, but being on the road with Chicago 8 months out of the year, it's not fair to the students.
Yeah, right. That's
it
right.
would be a total lie if you can say that you can teach.
Some of those universities, they do have these big names to attract people, but then those guys are on the road most of the time, and you don't really get to study with them. So that's good, man. That's good. You did the right thing. Oh man, we got so much to ask you about. So you come from. It's interesting. You start with a story about your daughter because you come from such an incredibly musical family, with deep heritage in Cuban music. And tell us a bit about growing up in Cuba and how you started to learn to play.
Well, even though, when you say the word Cuba, of course, Puerto Rico. The crazy thing is that my dad was not just a Latin player. So I was born in Cuba, and my dad was the house drummer at the Casino Parisien, which is like in the Hotel Nacional. My grandfather was the musical director. And
okay.
Yeah, on my mother's side, we had a whole other orchestra, the Palau Orchestra. So I came from a mother's side of musicians and a father's side. But in those days, my dad played and that's when he became an innovator. My dad was raised in New York City from age 10 to 18, studied with Henry Adler, and he went to Birdland, saw the big band, saw Buddy Rich Wilson, Ed Shaughnessy, Charlie Purcell, all the drummers. So my dad, when he arrived in Cuba at age 18, he played all the styles. So at the showroom, he played foxtrot, swing, big band, and then the Latin combo came in, and then he goes, well, wait a second. why do I have to step out of my drum set and go and play timbales and congas mixed together? And then he started adding the percussion to his drum set. And then, okay, I play brushes, swing, you know, all the hits of the moment. And then on the combo, the Latin dancing set, he just switched to percussion, but now he had the bass drum, he had the crash cymbals, he had the snare, and you can take the snares off and it will be like a third timbale. And a lot of traditional Latin guys would criticize him back then. So the weird thing is, just like I'm talking about the 50s, there was one guy, Guillermo Barreto, that played unbelievable drums. In fact, one time he actually played because Buddy Rich got sick. So Buddy Rich was late and he jumped in and played, and Buddy was right behind the curtain going, who the hell is this guy? So you know, so my dad and Guillermo Barreto were like the innovators of drum set, old styles, and Latin percussion. So then at age 5, when the revolution came, they closed the hotel. We moved to New York City. Cuba's situation got worse. My dad remarried my stepmom from Puerto Rico, and we moved to Puerto Rico. And my dad was basically the house band drummer of Hotel San Juan, Tropicoro, where Bobby Darin, The Temptations, Liza Minnelli, the Supremes, he had to back all these people. And so, believe it or not, when you have a whole family of musicians, you want to rebel and become a veterinarian. Yeah. So my whole house was like my grandfather, da, 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 my saxophone uncle, I got to get some Reese. You want to come with me? And I saw Dr. Dolittle, and I wanted to be a veterinarian until I started listening to the music of my era, you know, the Guess Who, Rolling Stones, Chicago, Santana, the Guess Who, Cream, Jimi Hendrix, and on and on and on, FM, you know. And then I basically told my dad, you know, I want to play this music that I love. I never was a fan of soloing drummers, like star drumming, you know, and that was not my thing. My thing was like, how can I make the music that I like when I go to the dances? Crosby, Stills and Nash, and you know, Stevie Wonder, and all this music that was coming from the radio, Elvis. How I want to play, so I wanted to get drum lessons so I can use the drums as a vehicle to make this music that I love.
Okay.
And then, of course, my dad said, yeah, it's not just like that. I'm going to show you the beats and you're going to sit on the drum set. So he started me with a pad, which I have like right here, you know, a pad, a metronome, and the William Kessler musical book, Rudiments and Lesson. And I thought I was an abused child. You know? You know, what does this have to do with Ringo playing and Honky Tonk Woman? You know.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Well, so basically, make a long story short, I started drum lessons when I was like 12, and then at that time, my dad had a gig in Las Vegas, and we moved to Las Vegas. I continued my studies and continued to have private lessons with a drum teacher that worked in the Hilton, Leo Camera. And then I started playing percussion and drums, but then I started working really early at 16, playing percussion in a lot of bands and all that. And the rest is history. I got hired by Debbie Reynolds to play percussion. At 16, I had to have a sheriff's card and a musician's union card. And I couldn't go into the casino. I had to stay in the dressing room until the second show. And I couldn't go out, which made it kind of crazy because everybody between shows was having a fun time, the musicians and all that. Debbie was a star, couldn't go out anywhere. She stayed in the dressing room, and I stayed there. And then we actually became friends. And it was I was her young, she used to call me Frito Lay. Well, Frito.
That's
And
awesome.
I started playing percussion, and with the paycheck, I remember my first paycheck. Of course, I was living at home. I bought a set of congas and bongos, and I could afford to pay my drums. And then I got a taste for, you know, okay, only one summer I needed to buy my car, and I worked as a busboy at the old MGM that burned down.
Oh yeah.
And and believe it or not, that was the greatest thing that happened to me, because even though I was working as a musician and top 40 bands and at high school and lessons and all that and living at home, when I actually worked as a busboy, that's what lit a fire on my butt. And I went, okay, I definitely know that this is not what I want to do for a living. Yeah. And so I upped the level, and I clicked myself into what I call a sacrifice mode, which is what I tell some of my students. So music became 24/7. I ate on the drum set. My mom would come in and go, "Where do you want your food?" And goes, "Mom, I'm studying." Go, "Well, do you want it on the snare drum or on the tom-tom?" Like, yeah. Put it on the tom-tom, because the heat from the plate might alter my snare tuning. So literally, I was eating on the drum set, music in school, music after school, concert band, jazz ensemble, practice for music lessons, go and play in top 40 bands, go to concerts. And then I started going to the auditions. Like, I made it to the high school band audition. And then college at UNLV was coming, and I wanted the chair for the jazz ensemble. There was a friend of mine on that chair named Adam Chandel, who was like a Buddy Rich prodigy guy, that he played Buddy gave him the drum sets.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
So Adam was just badass, and I was playing percussion and learning from Adam, and then I got into the position. But, sometimes, like, I got a hashtag call, you gotta wanna. Sometimes some kids, at that age, contemporaries of me, were great drummers, but you can tell they didn't want it as bad as I did. Yeah. And so they actually became realtors, or they played drums and all that. But I became like obsessed, OCD, whatever you want to call it. And it was just, I didn't date the girls. I didn't play my prom, my senior prom. I played it, and I made money.
That's the way to do it, man.
Yeah. So that's a long story of short story of, my whole trajectory.
That's incredible.
Like your passion, that you had that inspiration, that you were just so fired up. Did you have family pressure to live up to that level?
No, they actually didn't want me to go into the music business.
Oh.
They didn't, really? No kidding, they didn't.
No, my dad was teaching me drums, and then he was going, "Look, I'm going to teach you how to play drums, because maybe when you get to college, while you're studying law and medicine, you can play some gigs in the weekend,
right,
and make some money while you're studying your." And I go, at that time, I didn't even enter, that I was going to go to college for music or anything, but I was in the moment. So Woodstock just happened. The lunar landing just happened.
Yeah.
Now I got to tell you something that is really, really strange. And this has nothing to do with, vision, or it happens that I was the oldest of 5. So that had a lot to do with it, because my dad is a drummer. So he was not, I had to earn my money. My mom was one of those, like, "It's a beautiful day, boys, go out there and make some money." And go, "Mom, I'm 9. Oh, I don't care, mow lawns, whatever." So I used to mow lawns. A lot of hard work in Puerto Rico. It's humid, and the grass grows like in 3 days. It's like this tall. And so I used to mow the neighbors' lawns, and I started getting some money. And then when I used to put my little brother to sleep or his nap, I used to turn on the radio, where I heard, Creedence Clearwater, you name it, any band that was on the radio, and I heard Beginnings, and I heard this song, and well, man, this tom-toms and this singer, And what is that? It's called a CTI. And I go, CTI? Okay, whatever. So I went to Gemco with the $10 that I got paid for mowing
Yeah.
lawns. My first record that I ever bought with my own money was CTI, Chicago
Really?
Transit Authority.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
wow.
And all these years later, you're in Chicago. That's amazing.
And
That's
so,
crazy.
so I remember opening that album and looking at the guys that had a poster.
Yeah.
And then the second album came in, and I was just imagining, wouldn't it be great to do this music live in front of people? And then, crazy enough, my second album was Cream, this Israeli gear. And my third album was Abraxas. And
No kidding.
yeah, and then of course, as I started learning more and more, I went through the books and the rudiments, and my dad started, giving me and upping the level. You think you know the lesson? It goes, yeah, Dad, let me show you the lesson. Okay, perfect. Well, that's great. That's at 120. Try it 128 now. And then like he used to do that. So as I got more advanced, then I started listening to Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and then my dad started showing me albums that it went like over my head. But of course, my mom had the salsa records in the living room, and my dad had on his turntable Buddy Rich Big Band, Thad Jones and Mel Lewis, Tony Williams with Miles Davis, Elvin Jones, Charles Lloyd with Jack DeJohnette, and all the classic drummers. But I didn't get it. I didn't get the jazz idiom because I was a rocker.
Right.
And when jazz and fusion started meeting, then my dad came to my bedroom and went, "Who's that?" And I went, "Dad, that's a band named CTI with Danny Serafin. He's really great." And then Blood, Sweat, and Tears. He goes, "Who's that?" He goes, "It's a drummer named Bobby Colomby." He goes, because that was more like horn, jazz.
Yeah.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Jazz rock.
Yeah.
Earth, Wind. Yeah, I was just going to say Earth, Wind, and Fire. You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Earth, Wind, and Fire later, Sly and the Family Stone, Cold Blood, Tower of Power later on. And then, of course, Billy Cobb on Spectrum and Fusion. So by the time I moved to Las Vegas, the word fusion was like all the jazz guys wanted to rock out, and all the rocker guys, including Jimi Hendrix, started getting psychedelic and out. And that's when Miles Davis and the rock and Chick Corea and it all fused together into a psychedelic jazz, fusion jazz rock.
Right.
And I was into all of it.
That's amazing.
Latin music, because I started going back to my mom's record, and she was putting this record on, in the living room, and her friends, they were dancing and this and that. Now I knew, and I was going, what the heck are they playing? This is like some serious shit, like rumba and congas.
Yeah.
And to apply that to the drum set, it was like, so then I started getting into that too, the Brazilian, airto, and so on and on and on.
When in this, so when you were 16, you were gigging, you playing professionally basically at that point, right? Then you went to school to UNLV, played in the big band there, again got out, and then like, what was your first big gig after you got out of college?
Well, that's a good question. I never finished college because of the big gigs. So what happens is I was working all the time. So I was working through high school, doing shows with Debbie Reynolds and then Top 40 and that in Vegas. And then I entered college. And while I was in college, I got hired to play legit percussion with a show named Guys and Dolls, the Black Guys and Dolls, which was the Black all-star version of the Broadway show Guys and Dolls that Sinatra did originally.
Yep.
But this one was with Leslie Uggams, Clifton Davis. And so while I was doing that show, I heard that Lola Falana was auditioning drummers. And I went and auditioned and I got the gig. But this time, she was going to go on tour. And I came home and I told my dad, "Dad, I got the gig with Lola Falana." And he goes, No. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something. Stars will come and go. Education is now. So you've got to finish your college degree or you'll never will. And in those days, there was no online. And so I said, "Dad, Are you kidding me? I'm going to college to get a gig like this. Besides, have you ever played drums while Lola Falana is dancing in front of you? Like, I mean, there's no way I'm going to say no, and I'm going to give this gig back. And I go, well, you'll never finish college. You'll be another one in the family that didn't finish college. With that being said, my daughter finished college and graduated, and I'm very proud of her. As you know, it's the sacrifice.
Well,
Yeah.
she almost went the same path as you because she got that gig with George Benson when she was almost done and almost didn't finish, just like you, right? But she finished, figured out a way. That's cool.
So you know what? That's a really good point that I've never even thought about. If my daughter would have gotten an offer like I did, the George Benson gig on her second year of college,
yeah,
that would have been a different story.
Right.
And that's what happened to me.
So okay, so you go on the road, you drop out of college, or you don't finish college, and then what? How much later? Like, what was the path that led you to playing with Santana?
Well, that's a big gap. So, like, while I was with Lola Falana, she worked in those days in Vegas. You did 2 shows a night, a dinner show and a cocktail show at 12. So if you were with the act, went 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week. So we were doing Vegas, Atlantic City, Lake Tahoe. There was no Indian casino, so it was just like a triangle of all year. And then we would play a month in Vegas, go to Atlantic City for a few weeks, 2 shows a night, and then take a week off, go to Reno, Nevada, go back to Vegas, you know. So what happened while I was in Vegas and doing that and playing around, so then I got the gig with Connie Stevens, then Doc Severinsen with Luis Conte on percussion. And I started working a lot, you know, to the point where then when I was with Lola Falana, my eyes were always set in LA because a lot of my friends like Alex Acuna that were in Vegas moved to LA. Luis Conte was in LA. I met a friend of mine in high school, in the high school festivals named Carlos Vega. And Carlos Vega was in LA. So I'm going like, you know, after you play all these showrooms in Las Vegas and you're making money. And I bought a townhouse when I was 21 and I was, you know, the king of the hill, you know what I'm saying? But that's not what my dreams was. I wanted to be in LA. So I got the Paul Anka gig, which was paid a lot of money in those days. It was like the top performer with the Gino Vanelli people. And, you know, you always make connections while you're working with artists. And then after that, I started working with Ben Vereen. And I asked Ben, hey, Ben, do I have to live in Vegas? I mean, can I fly from anywhere? And he goes, yeah, man, I don't care where you live. And he goes, well, I'm going to fly out of LAX because I put my townhouse for rent and I moved to LA. And while I was with Ben Vereen and then later on with Marilyn McCoo, I remember she had a show called Solid Gold.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember Marilyn McCoo. Yeah. And I remember Solid Gold. Yeah.
So when she was off, we would work and go on the road. And then she would do Solid Gold and I would be in LA paying dues. And paying dues, even though I had a gig, I moved to LA, believe it or not, rented my apartment for $350 in Sherman Oaks.
You can't do that anymore.
No, you can't rent a bathroom for $350 in Sherman.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, and I remember it was in front, I could walk to a club back then in 1980s called Josefina's, which, you know, Michael Thompson, Michael McDonald and his wife, you know, and a lot of musicians play there. So, you know, you start paying dues, meaning getting connections, still studying, taking drum lessons from anybody. People go, oh man, why are you moving to LA? There's so many drummers in competition. That's exactly who I want to meet and I want to study from them. Right. So if I saw a drummer that was great, I went like, hey man, can I buy your drink? Can I do lessons with you? Right. And that's one way to actually learn from the person. But then what happened is, you know, I started paying dues and I was just doing little sessions and I started basically getting rehearsals that Carlos Vegas couldn't do or a gig that he recommended me for Alex Acuna couldn't make it. one gig. So, hey, can you do it? So I started paying dues at 1980, 81, 82, 83, 84. I got the gig with Tania Maria, a Brazilian pianist.
Yeah.
And that was fusion Brazilian. And we opened for Spyro Gyra and David Sanborn.
Mhm.
And we
Remember
went on
those?
the road, like in all of Europe and Japan, all the United States. And then at a jazz festival, New Orleans Jazz Festival, I met this bass player. He was there backstage, and he goes, "Hey, man, hi, my name is Jorge Calderon. I play with David Lindley, and we're looking for a drummer that can play reggae, can play ska, can play some of the Latin grooves, but can funk out and rock out." And I went, I'm
Your
in.
man. Yeah.
So we auditioned and we jammed with David Lindley, Jorge, and I, in this
Cool.
little rock club in LA. I got the gig, and I would say that that's what opened. That was a chapter in my life that, after all I've been through from Vegas and Marilyn McCoo and Ben Vereen and Tania Maria, from there on with David Lindley, our first gig at the Golden Bear in LA, Joe Walsh, Jackson Brown, Bunny Raitt were there and sat in.
Wow.
And from there on, I started my association with Jackson Brown. I played on a couple of records. And then with Lindley, we opened up for the Grateful Dead in Santana. And that's when Santana saw me play.
Wow. I love it. I love David Lindley. El Rayo X.
That's right. So I played with Rayo X from 1984 through 1988. And in 1988, Santana kind of sounded me to be in the band. It was Graham Lear, and I went like, man, Graham Lear.
Yeah, Graham Lear is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw the show with Graham Lear, and then when they actually, but that's the way Carlos is, you know, he goes through transitions, and it was my turn, Graham, and then the same thing happened to me. When Rodney Holmes came in, it was my time to leave. Right. And so later on, but we opened up for the Grateful Dead. And also I got into a really good friendship with Jerry Garcia because he loved Lindley. And we opened up, and I started with Santana in 1989 and to 93. And while I was in that period, I also played with Boss Skaggs and Gloria Estefan. And in 94, I joined Traffic with Steve Winwood.
Oh, man.
Oh, wow. Really? Yeah, I didn't know you were in Traffic.
Yeah, I was. They were actually looking, and this is a drum lesson right here. They were looking for a percussionist drummer, but not a percussionist that can just play shaker. I mean, you have to do conga solos. You know, you have to be like. Remember, Traffic had Rebop Akubaku, which was the African percussionist. So you have to play hand drums and African rhythms and all that. And then I switched with Jim Capaldi on drum set. And that was a big tour, and we played 11 stadium shows opening for the Grateful Dead.
Cool.
Wow.
Man, that's fantastic.
My youngest son, I was married in 1989. I had my son Joseph. Liliana was born in 1991. And then my youngest son was born in 1994. So.
Wow, that's amazing.
Where are you now? Where do you live now?
I live with my wife in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. Because if I continue the journey, you know, unfortunately I got divorced, the mother of my kids. But I was with Traffic in 94, 95. I did a tour with Robbie Robertson Bennett from 1997 to, from 97 to 2004. I worked with Steve Winwood band. Not Traffic, but his band. And then, you know, with Mickey Hart and many other people, 2000 with Johnny Halliday and Jimmy Barnes in Australia. So in 2004, I was going through a divorce with the mother of my kids, and I couldn't be in England and Europe, and I had to be in the Bay Area on visitations and all that. So I had to quit Steve Winwood gig and unemploy myself to be a father. Right. And a lot of people don't know the sacrifice sometimes that you have to do. People go, why are you not with Steve Winwood? Because it's a long story. But then from there on, you know, I went on tour with Mickey Hart And from 2007 to 2011, I worked with Lindsey Buckingham.
Okay.
And then in 2011, our guitar player, right before the day of leaving to England, his back went so bad that he actually ultimately had to have an operation with titanium vertebrae and the whole thing. But instead of rehearsing and all that, Lindsey canceled the tour. And because of that, I went back on the workforce, percussion, teach drum lessons, teach percussion lessons, a gig with the band of Chicano, a show for a Filipino artist, my old Persian recording gigs that, I did, and all these things. And then I got a week playing percussion with Chicago, and I said, yeah, I love Chicago. So I learned the show. I went on the road with Chicago for 1 week, and on the third show, Robert Lamb hired me.
Wow.
And so how long were you playing percussion before Tris left and you took over for Tris?
Tris, in 2017, Tris had been with Chicago for like 28 years or something like that, 27.
Wow.
And so it's a long story, but, he was remarried, and he wanted to spend more time at home. And the bass player that we had at that time, the same thing. He had kids, homeschooled and all that. So Chicago is like, you got to go on the train or not, so basically it's like either your family meets you on the road, but you cannot have your family on the road all the time. Right. So that's the difficult thing.
Yeah.
Believe me, in my days when I was going through the road and all that, there was no FaceTime, there was no Zoom. When you left on the road, you didn't see your kids until you got back, and the dog barked at you. Rah, rah, rah.
Who's a stranger coming into our house?
Yeah. It's like, hey, buddy, I adopted you.
Yeah.
You don't recognize my
pays for your food. Yeah.
So those were tough days to road and family. But with that being said, Tris left in 2018. I started on drums. And, some of the guys with Chicago, not all of them, knew. Robert Lamb had heard some of my CDs. Lee actually didn't even know. Lou Pardini I had played with, and Keith knew that I played drums. So, and the saxophone player, I had done a tour with him on drums with Johnny Halliday from France. So when the thing came, unbeknownst to me, I had the percussion gig. I don't know who they're going to get on drums. I don't know if Danny's coming back. They're auditioning drummers, whatever. So I knew the book already, but in a different car,
Right, yeah.
I know the road, but I got to drive a different car.
Right.
And so Lee came to me and asked me, are you ready to jump on drums? And we're like, when? It's like, well, I don't know when, but it's like, damn. It's like, I don't want to really like jump on Tris's drum set. Like, he goes, can we start like say like I start on drums for next year tour? And he goes, well, let me see. And then these guys finished the tour, had Christmas off. Then on the new year, we started with a new bass player, singer, and me on drums. And then my brother was playing percussion, but he went back with Zach Brown Band, which my brother Danny.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the percussionist with Zach Brown Band. And then we got Ray Islas on percussion. So that's what was happening now.
How big was how big was the transition when you went from percussion? And like you said, you knew the book, you knew all the songs, you'd played them, but going from percussion to drums, I mean, how sure-footed were you the first couple of gigs? Obviously, you rehearsed and got ready, but were you in both worlds, or how did you make the transition?
Well, it's really funny because I always say this to everybody, and I'll say it here. People think that the worst thing you can do when you actually join a band, say like Todd Zuckerman joined Styx, he was not the original. When I joined Santana, I was not the original. When I play with Steve Winwood, definitely all the hits are not. It's Jim Capaldi, right. John Robinson, Steve Ferroni on some, and even Steve playing drums on some albums, Ark of the Diver. So when you're not the guy that recorded the songs, the best thing you can do is memorize the book, because these guys are not gone because they sucked. Right. Like the Tris situation was a personal one. So the first thing I'm going to do, I mean, I was playing with him, so I know what he did, is memorize the drum book as Tris did it.
Right.
Because now you're smooth sailing. It's not like, oh, wait till I get on the drum chair and really show what I
Right. Yeah.
I used to share a studio with a drummer named Michael Urbano. I don't know if you know him. And he I can't remember who he was about to go on tour with, but he was taking over the chair for somebody else. And he was in the studio and he was just hitting his floor tom over and over. I was like, man, what are you doing? And he said, I'm trying to just get my tones dialed in so that I sound just like the drummer on the record. Because not only do I want to play the parts, I want to sound like the parts. I was like,
that's very smart. And I actually kind of did that. Even my setup is like 10, 12, 13. You know, Chris had 3 tom-toms and 2 floors.
Yeah.
I had to take the 18-inch floor tom out because we do a drum solo and it was blocking the percussionist running around. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Drum solo. And I got tired of my drum tech going, hey, Wally, I'm going to change the drum heads, but the 18, you haven't hardly hit it. So I go, oh, don't worry. So I finally went, if I'm not hardly hitting it and it's in the way, just take it home. And so like I'm only using 10, 12, 13, 16 and 2 snares. But that's the thing, you know, so basically I took over what Tris vocabulary and then we go on the road and in some things, of course, Chicago doesn't tell you much, but sometimes they tell you things for like, you know, like say beginnings, you know, I'm playing beginnings. And I actually love a lot of the Danny that he had done. And especially on beginnings, actually, there's like drum break when the bass lick. So on beginning, so that was like not what was happening. So I actually brought that back and I decided, I'm going to be ballsy and I'm going to do Danny's fill. The band didn't say anything. They dug it. So I go like, well, okay, stays. If they tell me, nah, and like, for example, Robert would tell me, you don't have to do the fills. I go, are you kidding me? That's like to me, some of what makes the song.
Yeah.
You just wanted a groove. You know, you just wanted a groove. And I went, this doesn't sound, you know, so I actually, not that I'm, you know, defending, you know, bringing, but I love a lot of the things that Danny did. So I brought some of those back, but still playing the pocket like Tris did. Because what I think Tris did with Chicago, when I joined Chicago as a percussionist, and I told him then, and I can tell him right now, that son of a bitch made me dance on stage.
Yeah.
Every night, I used to work out dancing because his grooves. It was just like, so he basically funkified a lot of the Chicago tunes. Danny at one point, you know, and it was like no judgment or critics. It's just the era. It was almost like a jazz rock fusion band.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. That's how I remember him in the early days. Quick question for you.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
When you took over the drum chair from percussionist seat, did you do any transcribing of parts to learn them, or did you just listen to the records, or you knew them all because you played with them so many times already?
Yeah, you know, it's really strange, but and I had this question asked the other day on Facebook, and this will shock you. It's not that I don't know how to read music. I learned how to read music. I was in the jazz ensemble at UNLV,
right? Like
with charts by Bob Florence, Carl Fontana, and Louis Bellson. It was the hardest things that I ever read when I was in college. Symphonic, contemporary works.
Mm-hmm.
It was like ridiculously, like black page, you know, tape on the song, play a roll on the snare, go, and then
release the penguin.
Crazy shit that was all written 5/8, you know, the 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 and a 2 bar. 2 bar. What the hell? You know, but, you know, I gotta say something. My whole years with Santana, all my years with Steve Winwood, all my years with Lindsey Buckingham, Robbie Robertson, Mickey Hart, and Chicago, I've never had a chart.
Wow.
Really, you never read it? No kidding. That's amazing. That's amazing.
However, and this is I put a thing that became like so controversial, and it's kind of like something that I actually, since I'm in this platform right here, and you guys I know, but you know, I say like those who don't know, and those who know. And sometimes there's people, even after you teach them, they don't want to know.
Yeah.
So, like, the thing is this, my charts and my paperwork consisted of Steve Winwood, 30 years, Santana, at that time, 30 or 40 years, Chicago, you know, like right now we're going on 55 years.
Wow.
I have every damn record tempo and every tempo of the live performances. And my thing is that when I actually sit down and look back at my career, and this is my 52nd year in the professional music business, it's all been about tempo, styles, and grooves that feel good on that style, so you can make the musicians and the music feel good.
Right.
So you gotta know. Say like right now, somebody, and I have about 3 or 4 around here, and now I don't see any. I have like the Tama, the clicker, tempo.
Yeah. The rhythm watch. Yeah.
So that guy lives in my hi-hat. So basically my hi-hat stand has a connection that I put that. So if I'm in rehearsals, even in a club, anywhere, and the guitar player or the singer in the studio, the producer goes, "Hey man, I got an idea." I go click. Okay, that's 118. All right, let's do it. So now I know it's 118. So now we figure out a groove that goes well. So how do you want this? You want a swingy, you want a shuffle, you want straight eighth note, you want quarter note feel like rock, you want cowbell, Latin. That's styles.
So do you have your metronome on stage when you're counting in tunes? You use that for reference?
I have my metronome always everywhere.
Yeah, good.
But like,
you don't play to the click live though. Do you hear it when you're playing live?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We did that with Lindsey Buckingham, and the reason for that is many reasons, and a lot of drummers don't even know that. For example, Steve Winwood would set his guitar delay.
Yes.
Got to be at a certain tempo.
And then you click it and you tap it. So that's a certain tempo. And then there's the voice. The sound guy will come to me with a paper, go, "Wally, what tempo is higher love? What tempo is back in the high life? What tempo?" And I go, "Why do you want to know all these tempos?" He goes, "Because the effect on the voice. You know, everybody, you know, like U2, the delays on those guitars.
Right.
If you try to play that tempo, but you don't really know what that tempo is, and say it is 120, and all of a sudden you get excited and you go 121, 122, that's gonna wash.
Right.
You know, those delays. Not all music is, for example, with Chicago, the ballet doesn't have a click. So it's all, but it has tempos, but it doesn't have a click. In fact, I don't even know what tempo is Color My World, but I can tell you it's da 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 da.
So do you count tunes in off of the metronome when you're at a live show?
No, not with Chicago. All the tempos that you need to know are here. And actually, Lee puts them to like Saturday in the Park, 1, 2, and not only the tempo, but the song that is coming. And,
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, the reason Chicago does that, and just like Lindsey did it, Lindsey, instead of hiring an additional singer or additional piano player to play like a couple of pads, or in one song play harmony and give her a hotel room and a plane ticket, you put it on the track.
Yeah.
So basically, you have maybe our percussionist is playing congas and tambourine and claps, and maybe something with his foot, and I'm playing drums, but there's more. And so maybe we can add some additional on percussion on the tracks. Plus, some of the horns are double, because a lot of people don't know that Chicago, when they were in the studio, they doubled their horns.
Oh yeah, yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So you have 6 horns.
Right.
And so with that being said, you know, I mean, you can't hire 3 other guys for some songs. So with that being said, with Lindsey, it was a lot on a click. With Steve Winwood, it was not on a click, but I had to be on the tempo. So say, for example, he came to me one time and say, "Hey, Wally, I want to do the Blind Faith song, Can't Find My Way Home." And I went, "Oh yeah, one Ginger Baker place." And I remember there's a big splash that I always wondered.
Yes.
Why did he hit that?
Yes.
big
Yes.
splash?
Yes.
And why did the producer didn't go, "Oh, wait a second, we gotta take the microphone, Ginger, can you put that splash, make adjustments?" And so of course I asked him afterwards. I said, like, "Steve, can I ask you a question when I hear that song?" And he goes, "Well, the whole time we were recording, Ginger was on heroin. Nobody could tell him anything."
Oh man!
I went, "What?" And so that explains it. But what happened is, like, he goes, "Okay, Wally, I want to do this. The Can't Find My Way Home."
Oh, that's not like the original.
at all.
Okay, not the like the original. So what did I do? Tempo, 87, and 87 it was for many years, because 87. So now I clicked the tempo. When I went on the drum set, and I did what he sang to me, and he played it on the guitar. That's it, and that's the way you hear it. And you can go into a sound stage. We do it. I have it on my Instagram and my Facebook, and that's the way it was. And so the tempo is locked, and you don't have to talk about, "Oh, last night was a little fast."
Right.
Was it slow? No.
Well,
It's been 87 for 5 years.
if nothing else, you answered a big mystery for me about that splash symbol on Can't Find My Way Home.
Hey, I've got a question for you, and we're getting a little short on time, but with Danny in Chicago, and if you can't talk about this, is that kind of patched up now? You mentioned when you were on the percussion chair, you're like, I don't know if they're going to call Danny or what's going to happen. Are they friends now? And do they ever talk? Have you ever met him?
No,
I'm just curious.
fortunately, I learned one thing, and I would say is the same thing as Danny and the original guys with Chicago. It was the same thing as Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. It was the same thing with Carlos and certain guys like Neil and Greg Rowley. Apparently, they worked out some things and they did a tour together, but it's still, they'll never be a band that will continue forward. So with that being said, I learned one thing, playing with all these bands. It's almost like I cannot get in the middle of your wife and you, or your brother and you. That's your story. So like, you can get in the middle, because there was an era, these guys were kids, and a lot happened.
Yeah.
And a lot happened that nobody will know, and it's nobody's business to know.
Right.
So with that being said, I'm friends with Danny, I'm friends with Tris, and I'm friends with all the drummers before me with Santana and after.
Mm-hmm.
So like, drummers are a very peculiar breed. We know how much work and what we have to do. So there's a big, great friendship. Like Joe Sample, I used to work with Joe Sample Trio, and he used to tell me that. He goes, "Man, every time we do a gig, you're hanging out with drummers. The hell if a piano player is going to come to my gig and go, 'Hey, Joe, you sounded great.'"
Yeah.
Right, exactly. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah. So it's but with that being said, Danny has the book, and then some of these guys, and including the manager, contradict. Yeah, but this wasn't said, and whatever happened. It's whatever happened. It was unfortunately for in many ways, but it happens. And all I know is like if, and this is another subject. When I came with Chicago, I took over Tris. Tris have been there for 20 something years already.
Right.
Then the guys tell me to do certain things. He goes, yeah, man, that's really great. Leave that. And then like, yeah, in here, don't do this, don't do that. And yeah, you don't have to play all these fills, just mainly groove. Beginnings is a little faster than the original. Color My World is a little faster than the original. So what I'm saying is it's 2024 with this band, and Chicago, let me put it like this. In 1974, when I saw Chicago in Las Vegas, they were not sounding like 1969 anymore.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I always say, if you want a copy of the CTI and the second album to the T, not like Chicago played it in 74, 76, and on and on and on, then you got to go and see those Lanois and friends, because what they do is they copy the album. But Chicago doesn't want to be like they were. And are you the same person as 1970?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that if you're not evolving, you're just kind of being stagnant, or you're going backwards, and who wants to do that? Exactly.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I have to ask you this question, which is, what advice do you have for young drummers who are coming up, who are watching our show?
Well, it's a different world. There's no record companies like they used to. In a way, it's good. In a way, it's bad. The budgets are different. You have social media. So you, first of all, you got to be a more versatile person today. I used to know, I come from an era where I used to know some percussionists that I play congas and made a career out of it, and go like, what? You don't even play bongos? Right. I mean, it was like, I'm a conga player or I'm a maraca player, and go, you're kidding me. Today, you got to be a drummer. You got to know the electronics. You got to learn how to do the samples and all that stuff. You got to learn how to record yourself. You got to learn the latest and the oldest. You got to learn styles, learn your tempos. Musicians learn keys. Oh yeah, that's about C natural. And you can say, yeah, that's close to 120. So, you got to learn your tempos and your grooves. You got to learn your styles. And then use your social media as your resume. Don't put it down like, this is what I've done. And no, like, show me. There's a lot of drummers that I know in Instagram that have gotten major gigs because they've shown to the world what they can do. So I have some students that are badass. They can do Huff for Your Teacher. They can do this. They can do that. Now they have a band, and man, they're like killing. Where's your Instagram? Where are your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok, whatever? You got to use it to your advantage, and become just the best that you can be. And the more you can add value. For example, my daughter, I told her, I says, honey, I know you didn't set out to be a percussionist, but now percussion, you added value to your vocals.
Right.
Yep. You're not just a singer anymore. So the same thing, I've gotten so much calls. For example, I'm doing when I finish this, I'm going to do 3 tracks right here. They send me the tracks. So just so I can actually, there's no music involved. So when I listen to the track, I actually start putting some percussion in a way to actually do markers. Mm-hmm. So man, it needs like something a little more here. So just for me, I'm going to do a conga. So when I send the track, I say, you can delete all the percussion that I put in there, or you can keep it. And a lot of the times they keep it. So What does that mean? Shit, I get Wally to do tracks, and it comes back with percussion and drum set, or different things that are electronic, or like sounds and that kind of thing. Because I do it so I can go, okay, when this thing starts, I come in and here, so I create my own tracks,
Arrange
and then I send them to them.
Yeah.
So you have to be as versatile. I noticed that, that has helped me a lot. I've done percussion gigs and I've done drum set gigs. And so whatever you can do, the more versatile, the more styles you know. And basically there's a thing that is called what I call on stage, off stage. Nobody wants a genius drummer asshole.
Say that again.
Say that again.
Nobody wants to hire a genius drummer asshole.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
With that being said, when you're off stage, if it's not working, you can be fired because even though you're playing great. So you gotta be the best drummer possible, the best musician, not just drum, because your life has the cymbals. I mean, you gotta be a great musician for the music that you're playing. When you get off of those drums, you become the best human being and be of service to your friends, your audience, your bandmates.
Yeah.
Be the guy that brings the coffee and the donut or drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be the guy that somebody's having a bad day. Hey man, let's go and get some coffee. Tell me all about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
This is unfortunately why Bart doesn't work very much.
Exactly. I know.
He's great on stage, but man, off stage, you can't even.
You can't get close to me, man. I'm telling you.
All you can stand. No, Bart is the sweetest. Bart is that guy. He brings all the donuts.
Oh, well, thank you. That's good. But I was going to say the deck weekend, that was just, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring you guys down.
Wally, so are you still taking on students?
What was that?
Are you still taking on students?
Oh yeah, I always have had students. Sometimes I can teach more than others. What I cannot do, like I've been offered one time to do percussion at Berklee School of Music and another time to go to the Thornton. I can't do it. First of all, I met my wife when I went from LA. I moved in 2017 back to Vegas. I met my wife, and she's from Cincinnati, and she couldn't move over there. So I decided, well, I moved. The airport is a piece of cake, so I go in and out. And I have students here, but I cannot be a steady teacher because Chicago is constantly traveling, and I'm not going to move to Boston to teach at Berklee, and I cannot go back to LA to teach at USC. But with that being said, I do Zooms, and I do on percussion, on drums, and I love it because, I love to be a teacher because I was a student.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of indirect meaning going to drum clinics and without ever meeting the drummer, I learned so much. Yeah. And then direct, like where I approach the drummer and go, can we do a lesson? Yeah. Now, so I've been to so many clinics off the top of my head that I cannot tell you. Alan Dawson, Billy Cobham, Steve Gadd, and little things they said that will carry on through the years.
Beautiful.
So like
I saw Graham Lear in a clinic one time, and it was when he played on the Z-Bop record, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I love that song "Winning." And it was the very first time. I love that tune, the timbales. That and Hotel California was the first time I went, what's that? I gotta have those. I love the tone of a timbale, and I'm not a timbale, but I love it. And I remember seeing him in a clinic in Denver. That's where I'm from. And I remember what you just said. Like he did this. He got up and played what seemed like an hour. He just played this incredible solo. Never did the same thing twice. And then when he started talking and conveying his thoughts, he was so damn funny. And you could tell that, like, if you went out to coffee with this guy or went out and got pizza, it would just be, what a great dude. You could just tell,
Oh, yeah. I gotten, believe it or not, like, it was a weird position to go after Graham Lear because I was a fan. And then when he actually stopped being with Santana and I started with Santana. So then, of course, he came to a couple of shows because he moved to Portland from LA. When after Santana, he had his kids and his wife. And So they moved to Portland, and then I hung out with him in Portland. And then later on, believe it or not, on some of those between tours, I did Paul Anka again on percussion, and Graham was playing drums.
Mhm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was like 2002, 2003.
Stevie D used to play with Graham Lear. I mean,
Yeah.
with
Paul
Paul
Anka.
Anka. Yeah.
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 So,
Stevie and I are great friends. Yeah.
yeah, so it was just great. Graham's such a great guy, and then he moved back to I think Ontario. Originally, he's from London, Ontario, and that's where all the Gino Vanelli musicians, the original band with Gino Vanelli. I mean, I was a fan of Gino Vanelli.
Yeah.
And so, Graham is great. Through the years, we're all in this together. There's no famous drummers. No, famous, like if you're on a hit record, then you're famous. And then when the hit record goes away, you're back at it. But at the same time, you're the same person. So I was a big fan of Steve Gadd, and I went to the studio with kind of like, believe it or not, it was like almost like what you would say a Steve Gadd groupie.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan.
I know. So I would go to New York to see stuff. I would buy all the records. I would go to the Siljan drum clinics. I never met the guy. And then Alex Acuna said, man, I'm recording a record in LA with Don Grusin, Dave Grusin, Abe Labarille, and Steve Gadd. So I drove 5 hours from Las Vegas to be in the studio.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I met Steve Gadd, asked him a couple of questions. And then time went by, and after I got the Santana gig, and this is emotional for me, actually, because I'm a friend of Steve right now, but I'm going back in time. So I was probably my last tour with Santana, and I recorded it. I think it's in my Instagram somewhere. And I was on the drum solo. I look in the audience, and it's Steve Gadd, Dennis Chambers. Sitting
No!
On the right side was Peter Erskine and what's the name of the brush? Ed Thigpen.
Thigpen, yeah.
No way.
I go on the left side, and there's Johnny McLaughlin with Terry Lee Carrington.
Oh my
And
God.
This is Montreux Jazz Festival.
No pressure.
Yeah, really.
So I played my ass off as I could, and as I would always do, and then after that, I was kind of like bummed out. Of course, like Picasso said, a happy artist is a dead artist.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was bummed out, and I came to the hotel room, and the Swiss German lady went, Mr. Reyes? He goes, yes. He goes, I have a message. And I go, oh, shoot, I hope everything's fine at home, because it was like, wife, kids. And so I actually open up, and there's a note from Steve Gadd that said, Wally, the energy was amazing. You played your ass off. Healthy and happy touring, Steve.
Wow.
And that's my high school. That's my college diploma.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Way to go.
Frame that and put it on your wall.
I framed it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
Maybe
And
could you
then
make a
now
photocopy
we're like
and just
friends. My brother passed away, unfortunately, in Christmas Eve of last December.
Oh.
And I was in Vegas. Steve Gadd, I heard, moved to Vegas. So I was in Vegas with Chicago at the Venetian, and the phone rang, and it's Steve Gadd.
Wow.
And to tell me, I'm so sorry about your loss, and how's your dad? How's he taking it? This and that. It was a human conversation.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, I almost had tears in my eye, because I actually, as he was talking to me, it was almost like, wait a second. This is the Steve Gadd that I actually was a fan all these years. And now we're just having a man-to-man conversation about, needless to say, what a great human being he is, and what an amazing drummer and inspiration. So I always try to follow these guys, like Jeff Porcaro, the same guy, always a defender of drummers, hanging out with Jeff. I would say, hey, man, have you ever noticed this? Go, hey, man, don't let him say that to you, this and that, blah, blah, blah. He was like a defender of drummers, always giving advice and helping people. So, as drummers, you guys, even though you get paid sometimes to play and sometimes we don't get paid, at the end of the day, you're of service, because you're of service to service with your drumming, make the musicians in the band, the artist, the singer, the producer, the arranger, the composer look and sound better.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're getting paid for your service.
Yeah.
For you to uplift the song and the musicians.
Yeah.
It's not about you, it's about what you do to them,
Right.
the audience,
Yeah.
and the people dancing. You're playing drums and the people are going nuts and they're dancing. You don't know these people. You didn't force them to dance.
Right.
Your beat made them dance.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Wally, on that note, we do have to get off the show. This has been such a joy, and I kind of want to end it there, because this great story about Steve Gadd and this great story about what you just said, your beat moves people. And I'll use that as a shameless plug. My new book, the Rhythmic Journey, that's what it's all about, is what drums do to people and how rhythm affects all of our lives. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Deck, thank you for being on. Wally, thank you so much for being on. Deck. We would love to have you back sometime. I'll be in touch with you real soon. I'll send you a link to the video. You can share it if you'd like. We appreciate it.
I will.
And to all the drummers out there watching this, he just hit the nail on the head of what we do on Drummers Education Connection. That is, we're drummers. We hang out, we talk about drums, and we lift each other up and we defend each other. So everybody, thank you for watching. Deck. Wally, thank you for being on.
Wally.
Rick,
Thank you.
play us out, brother. Give us a rototom thing.